interesting thing about, we were talking about when was Job's time.
Yes.
We have
Yes.
some interesting mention of these very ancient sounding creatures, the Behemoth and the Leviathan. It kind of gives us a very primeval idea of this world that Job lives in, no?
Yes. Well, it's obviously after the flood, so obviously those animals were in the ark when the flood happened. So they were probably not the biggest dinosaurs, but they were.
Right.
Well, actually, in those days they called them dragons.
Yeah.
And there were fire-breathing dragons because Job describes, or the Lord describes it to Job there.
Yeah.
Right? So he's speaking to Job and describing the animals that Job is seeing. And he said, did you make this animal?
Yeah.
Right? So these animals did come out of the ark, and they were dragons because it wasn't until 1845 that the evolutionists came up with the word dinosaur that took the place of dragons. Because throughout history, St. George and the Dragon, there's all kinds of mentions of dragons. And
well, in the Bible though, they're using these other names like dragon comes up as kind of a bad name in the Bible.
Yeah.
But then they talk about this thing, this creature Behemoth, is described as sounds like a very noble creature. It talks about something about how only God knows his ways, and he lives in the mountains, and he eats herbs, and he stops up rivers. It's this very impressive creature there.
Behold now, Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar, the sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong as pieces of brass, his bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fence. The shady trees cover him with their shadow, the willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes, his nose pierceth through snares.
Now, maybe Job had actually seen one, or maybe he had only heard about them. It doesn't sound like they're running around all over the place, but they do have a knowledge that these things exist in some of the more remote areas, maybe.
Well, it's interesting that God would describe it to Job.
Mm-hmm.
Job must have been able to relate to it.
Yeah.
So
that's right. And the Leviathan, something else, who can catch him with a hook or something like that.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
His
it says,
scales-
"Canst thou draw Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down?"
These
Can you
sound
put a
like
hook into his
giant-
nose? Can you bore his jaw through with? It's really pretty
something
dramatic.
like a giant saltwater crocodile, or one of these sea monsters, as we would call them
yes.
today.
Well, Nehemiah it does say that a sea monster, dragon, large aquatic animal, dinosaur, thesaurus, all these different descriptions here.
Canst thou draw out Leviathan with an hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant with thee? Wilt thou take him for a servant forever? Wilt thou play with him as with a bird, or wilt thou bind him for thy maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Lay thine hand upon him. Remember the battle, do no more. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? Who hath prevented me that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. I will not conceal his parts, nor his power, nor his comely proportion. Who can discover the face of his garment, or who can come to him with his double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride shut up together as with a closed seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together that they cannot be sundered. By his neesings a light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. In his neck remaineth strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together. They are firm in themselves, they cannot be moved. His heart is as firm as a stone, yea, as hard as a piece of the nether millstone. When he raiseth up himself, the mighty are afraid. By reason of breakings they purify themselves. The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee, sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble, he laugheth at the shaking of a spear. Sharp stones are under him, he spreadeth sharp pointed things upon the mire. He maketh the deep boil like a pot, he maketh the sea like a pot of ointment. He maketh a path to shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. Upon earth there is not his like, who is made without fear. He beholdeth all high things. He is a king over the children of pride.
Could have been living in the water because it's so heavy, because the water would uphold its weight, right?
Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. I mean, people do say they've seen things like that.
Oh yeah.
To this day.
For sure.
Yes.
That's a fun topic. I don't
Yes.
know. I don't know if there are those kind of creatures around today, but it's fun.
Yeah. So it shows that they did exist, actually, and whether Job was living at the time, if he ever saw one, chances are he did. You know. So that places him way back in history.
Yeah.
Just after the flood.
Yeah, because these things, clearly don't seem to have lasted very long, at least as far as being seen on Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. These animals after the flood, of course, the longevity went down. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people weren't living as long, and probably the animals couldn't take that lack of oxygen that was.
Yeah.
And they slowly disappeared.
Right.